No fucking horse beef, man. It's horse beef. I'm back again, dude. Off the back of this recent controversy surrounding Conor McGregor and his knee injury, right? Pre-fight knee injury potentially. There's been a lot of debate going around this, and I wanted to make a follow-up video to cover my thoughts and to go over the possible scenarios which have taken place in my opinion, because I feel like there is a lot of uncertainty going around. I feel like there are a lot of people who are denying like clear evidence of a pre-fight injury just for the sake of it. I'm not really sure, man. I feel like people are acting as if calling out a pre-fight injury is somehow a defense of Conor McGregor, but it's not whatsoever, because in my opinion, Conor McGregor, if he did in fact go into this fight knowingly compromised and that the UFC brass were aware of a pre-fight injury, allowed him to get into that cage, then everyone was fucking scammed. This is anything but a defense of Conor McGregor. I also picked him to lose, and I said in the video where I picked him to lose, I don't really give him much of a chance. So regardless of whether he was injured or not and lost the fight based off an injury or not, I believe that he was going to be finished in this fight regardless, and he didn't really have much of a shot here. 5-year layoff after all the abuse done to his body. It made no sense, in my opinion, for many people to pick him, but I get it, right? He got a lot of people into the sport, and there was the bias, coming off of that alone. So I get it, right? But I would like to get into some possible theories as to what took place on Saturday night. And first, I would like to address Vampiric Leg's claim, because I do feel like he actually did put out a pretty comprehensive video. Obviously, right, he is extrapolating quite a bit just based off of clips. And that's pretty much what it is, right? And people are going to call him a conspiracy theorist and call him crazy and all that for suggesting that Conor may have gone into the fight with an injury, even though that, dude, it looks very likely in my opinion. Obviously, one point that Vampiric Legs did point out in his video, which I would like to address now that I wasn't aware of, is that he did make a visit to a pain clinic just a few days before the fight. Now, that could be commonplace, right? I'm not sure what the protocol is for a professional fighter leading up to their fight. I have no clue, but I would imagine that if you're in fight camp, you are going to have to micromanage your body, right? You are picking up little niggles here and there, of course, right? Fighters rarely go into fights 100% healthy, so yeah, man, I don't know if him visiting a pain clinic is proof that he was injured before the fight in and of itself, right? And then we can examine his walk in this moment as he approaches the pain clinic. And I can see that potentially he's dragging that right leg just a bit, right? I have had issues with my LCL in the past, partial tears and all that. And you're not exactly walking with a limp simply because you have a knee injury, right? My mother, for example, I'll give you guys a pretty good example here. My mom actually tore her ACL and never actually walked with a limp leading up to her surgery. And then there was one day she took like a little step off of a fucking step ladder, and then that just obliterated her ACL, and then she couldn't walk. But her shit was torn up before that, and she was able to walk fine until she just completely exacerbated the issue. Now, that is just an anecdote, of course, a personal anecdote, but the same type of thing could have just happened to Conor McGregor, right? He could have had an injury, a little partial tear going into it that he was weary of, right? And I will go back to the weigh-in. I will go back to that and the pre-fight moment where he takes off his shoes, where he is pretty weary of putting weight on that right leg. There are people claiming that it was the wrong leg and this, that, but that's not actually the wrong leg, dude. He is favoring the left leg. He's putting weight on the left, and he's clearly quite weary of putting weight on that right foot. He's looking down at it, and as someone, like I said, who has had minor knee injuries in the past, you are weary of taking off your shoes. Just simply taking off your shoes can cause some pain, right? Twisting up. Like, if you take off your shoes without untying the laces and going through all that rigmarole, you can really fucking twist your shit and tweak it. Like, it's actually not very hard whatsoever if you have a partial tear already present. We then get this video, which was put out after the fact by the UFC, interestingly enough, I guess to try and prove that, hey man, he couldn't have been injured because he was throwing it before the fight. And obviously many people will take this as proof that in fact those claims that he was injured before the fight, went into the fight with an injury, are false simply because he's throwing it, right? They're saying he's throwing it really hard, but you can see he's actually easing up quite a bit. And then you can see he examines the right leg after he throws that there. I'm not saying that's proof of anything. I'm just saying that observations can definitely be made. And yeah, comparing it, yeah, he threw the kick, right? He threw it, like, and he clearly pulled back on it as well. Like, this is not proof that his leg was a-okay going into the fight just because he was throwing it and because he was throwing kicks planted on that leg as well. He was not leathering those kicks like some people may lead you to believe he was. He was actually holding back quite a bit. Maybe he was just testing out to see if he would be able to open up with that technique. I have no clue. But yeah, obviously him throwing on that leg before the fight does lead people to believe, understandably so, that he went in there completely healthy. But I would say that this video is proof of neither. This doesn't disprove the claims, nor does it completely back up the claims. But there is the moment that you can clearly see where after throwing one of those kicks, he does look down at that knee once again, right? Clearly he was, in my opinion, quite weary of something. And we also have this moment just before the fight too, where he's, doing his little strut around the octagon, or he's, in my opinion, kind of walking a little bit funny, taking some weird steps, almost tripping over his own feet at times, the way he takes that turn there. And obviously the body language, many people point out the body language, right? The looks on his face, right? Trying to really, really analyze the body language to say, well, he clearly was not very confident going into this one, which is uncharacteristic for Conor McGregor, which is fair, but you could also just attribute that to the fucking 5-year layoff. Doesn't matter if you're Conor McGregor or whoever you are, man. After that much time away, you're going to have some doubt in yourself at the very least. But I will say that also the way that he's walking around there, as I said, was a little bit funny. Just a bit of a funny little walk there. And I do feel like Dana kind of opens up more room for speculation when he ended the post-fight presser and then came back in to make a statement on some of the claims, or I guess quote-unquote clear up some of the claims that people have been making about Conor going in there with an injury. So listen to what he had to say.
So we were talking about the guy over here earlier asking about there being a pre-injury. Just on my accounts, the face-off that day is at 80 million views, right? So if there was a pre-existing injury, somebody would have noticed it. He was limping, put his shoes on, he ran right at him. I don't think there was. Anything is possible, but he sure didn't look like it. And for 80 million just on my accounts, that number's got to be massive, and nobody noticed anything, so there you go.
So according to Dana White, dude, the proof is that no one noticed. 80 million on his accounts. No one noticed, though, even though that has to be false. There are most definitely people who pointed out the interesting way that Conor McGregor took off his shoes at the weigh-ins and expressed some concern. There's actually no way that no one noticed, but that's also proof of nothing whatsoever, because you say that no one noticed, what, because you didn't read any comments that pointed it out? I suppose, how would you even know that no one noticed? I actually don't understand how that's even possible. But I guess Dana White is fucking omniscient. But then, at the same time, though, Dana White, to disprove these claims, why don't you just come out and claim that he was examined pre-fight, which, like, fighters are supposed to be examined pre-fight, right, to be medically cleared. So why isn't that your reasoning? That he was cleared before the fight, medically, so there's no way that he had anything going into it, because physicians took a look at him to make sure that he could be cleared to fight. Because to my knowledge, it is a mandatory thing for fighters to be checked the day before and day of the fight. So if there was an injury going into it, the UFC probably would have been aware of it, and it would be in their best interest to cover up said pre-fight injury, considering this was the biggest gate in UFC history. And the show must go on, right? The show must go on. No one's getting refunds. And what's the best way to handle that situation? Stage it as if Conor McGregor just blew out his knee with his first action of the fight, right? That's one possibility. It's just a theory. It's a possibility that I'm laying out. I'm not saying that that is the truth. I'm just stating a possibility, which honestly, man, when thinking logically, you could be led to this conclusion. Like, I do understand how someone could be led to the conclusion that the UFC just sold us fucking wolf tickets. And I find it crazy how many people find it to be just inconceivable that the UFC would sell us wolf tickets. Like, how many betting scandals have we witnessed in the last few years at the very least? So many, man. There are many more fights that are not put under the microscope, that have not been put under the microscope, that you could put under the microscope, that do lead to some interesting conclusions, right? When it comes to potential rigging, right? I would send you in the way of Tyson Nam versus Ode Osborne, right? First and foremost, it's a pretty good example of a fight that people don't usually look at when it comes to being potentially rigged. But there are many, many examples of this, right? And there also was that claim. Remember, just I think at near the end of 2025, maybe beginning of this year, where there was that claim that the FBI was investigating over 1,000 fights, dude. I'm not too sure if that's far-fetched. I'm really not sure if that's far-fetched. And if you think that the UFC is above rigging shit for their own benefit when sports gambling has come into play and has completely polluted the UFC and pretty much sports in general, in my opinion, dude, I'm not going to call you an idiot, but you're very naive at the very least. And now I would like to take a look at what Brian Sutterer had to say, because I did watch his video and his examination, right, from the perspective of a doctor, right? People always like to say, trust science, trust the doctors and this and that. Okay, so let's trust the doctor right now. Listen to Brian Sutterer, because his examination of what happened with Conor McGregor the other day is consistent with the belief that Conor McGregor went in there with an injury.
Again, we're worried about his right leg. And as he goes to take that right shoe off, he kind of stumbles, but then very clearly doesn't want to put a bunch of weight down on that right leg. And they brought this up as like, well, we don't want to speculate if he was injured going into the fight. But this absolutely, to me, looks like somebody who was dealing with something on that right knee, didn't want to put their weight down on it to brace and catch their fall. I think that would even be more likely to be something like a meniscus. He could have been dealing with a meniscus injury before coming into the fight. When he threw that kick, landed, twisted, that aggravated things. So going back through this whole sequence again, this was the very start of the fight. McGregor comes down. As he goes and lands, that knee is going to twist and rotate. This is, yes, a compromising position that's challenging on the knee, but we don't see that classic tibia shift forward, pop backwards like you would to confirm like 100% that this is an ACL. The injury at the top of my differential is actually the lateral or the outer meniscus. Whenever he lands here, that is going to put a lot of load and twist on the knee, which can irritate an already injured meniscus or lead to a new injury of the meniscus. Again, though, this position, absolutely, we have to keep an ACL on the differential. I think, though, if we were going to see the ACL, it would have been in this position. We would have seen that knee rotate a little bit more. We would have seen the tibia shift. So I'm going to put ACL number 2 behind the meniscus number 1.
So I'm not saying that just because Dr. Brian Sutterer says that he believes that this is all consistent with a pre-fight injury, and him examining the moment where Conor McGregor takes off his shoe and kind of takes a funny step, right? It doesn't take a doctor to notice that he's clearly weary of putting weight on that fucking leg, dude. On the right leg, which is the one that he injured. Yes, it doesn't take a doctor to point that out, right? And he does also point to different types of conclusions, right? It could have been an ACL, even though we didn't see the typical visual of what it looks like when an ACL is torn in the moment, right? It could have been a new meniscus tear, or it could have been a pre-existing one that was irritated, right? He does lay out different possibilities. So take it with a grain of salt if you'd like, of course. But I did think that it would be interesting to give the perspective of a doctor, specifically someone who specializes with sports medicine and physical rehabilitation and all that, right? So clearly, he is not nobody when it comes to this, and his opinion should be held up in much higher regard than my own when it comes to his examination of this, although it just so happens that his examination does kind of, support my personal beliefs about the situation, which is that Conor McGregor was indeed injured beforehand. Do I think that it would have made any sort of a difference in the fight? Not really. I do think that Conor McGregor would have been finished regardless, and in my prediction video, I picked 4th round, and in hindsight, honestly, I gave Conor McGregor way too much credit. I believe that he probably would have got put out near the end of round 1 or some point during round 2. But what to believe, everybody? What are we believing? What are we thinking about all this? Let me know in the comment section below. I am curious, right? It's up for debate. I would say that there's a lot to speculate here, and I think anyone who is telling you, or who's trying to tell you that you are wrong, or that you're this or you're that for simply speculating, then disregard their opinion altogether, because there are moments to be examined. And whether Conor McGregor was injured pre-fight or not is significant, because if he was injured pre-fight, then that means that, as I said earlier in the video, we were scammed, and that the UFC was just trying to maintain and secure the biggest gate in UFC history, even though they knew their big cash cow was in no position to be fighting, because if he was injured, you know that the UFC would have been aware of this injury. You know that's the case. And it is hard to look past some of the pre-fight moments. And I know they're just little moments, and some people might say that we're over-examining them. But it's hard to deny that he is favoring the left leg and weary of putting weight on the right leg. And that is consistent across multiple different moments where he's taking off his shoes, where he's strutting around the octagon. He is always paying attention to that right leg. And it's interesting at the very, very least. And as I said, as somebody who has had knee issues in the past, I'm very familiar with that look. I'm very familiar with that weariness. And I've used that word a lot in this video. But I digress. And how does Conor McGregor benefit from this moment? He actually benefits quite greatly from it. I guess not in the sense that he potentially picked up a very serious injury, right? If he really did pick up the injury in that moment and tore something in his knee, then obviously he doesn't benefit from the fact that he has to sit out probably another year or upwards of a year. Who knows at that point, right? But now he has one less fight on the UFC contract. You could say that he stepped in here knowing that he could not compete just to get that one fight off of his contract. Or the fact that, hey man, you don't show up, you don't get paid. So he stepped in the octagon, secured the pay, and then the rest is history, right? There are many different scenarios which could have taken place. One possible scenario was that, you know what, man, he wasn't hurt whatsoever, came into the fight in perfect tip-top shape, even though that's very unlikely considering the life that he was living before he potentially turned things around, right? The drug abuse, the partying, the lifestyle. I don't know the extent of it, but it must have been a lot worse than we're aware of, you know what I mean? Because we're aware of a lot of it. So imagine the shit that he was getting up to, the things that he was doing, the substances that he was blasting behind closed doors. Imagine all of that. None of that is consistent with a reliable fighter, someone who's going to enter that cage healthy in any sort of a way, man. And the interesting part about all this is that all of the different theories could all be correct at the same time. You know what I mean? Conor McGregor could have been partially injured going into the fight and then also made it a lot worse and exacerbated the issue by throwing that very much retarded jumping switch roundhouse kick at the beginning of the fight. Yeah, both those things could be true. He could have been injured pre-fight and also had become even more injured as a result of that. And it also is possible that he was completely unfit to compete, and the UFC was made aware of that. And because the show must go on due to the biggest gate of all time and the return of the Mac, Conor McGregor was made to step in there despite the fact that he was in no position to fight, right? I don't know the truth. At the end of the day, this is all speculation. I said that in my last video, and I'm saying it once again. I don't know the truth. I really don't, man. Definitively, I have no clue. But in my personal opinion, I believe that Conor McGregor was injured before the fight. I think it makes all the sense in the world. If you disagree, that's perfectly fine. You don't have to agree with me. This really isn't up for much of debate because, as I said, all of these different theories can be true all at once in this case, dude. Right? But at the end of the day, regardless, the UFC sold us fucking wolf tickets, I believe. I believe the UFC may have scammed the fans out of this one. Now, if you were that excited to watch Conor McGregor fight and win after this much time, dude, I already thought that you were being sold wolf tickets to begin with because Conor McGregor was never going to go in there looking like anywhere near his prime self. And even 5 years ago against Dustin Poirier, he was already looking washed, man. So I'm pretty surprised that so many people were backing him to begin with. But man, it is what it is, right? Let me know in the comment section below, right? Because that does conclude my thoughts, right? So let me know in the comment section below. Do you agree? You disagree? Whatever your thoughts are surrounding UFC 329 and Conor McGregor's knee injury, just let me know in the comment section below. If you have any thoughts about life in general, let me know in the comment section below. And as always, guys, I appreciate you very much for watching, and I will see you on the next one.